Let's talk martial arts, gaming, and my experience with the video game Sifu. Today we're going to be breaking down everything about Sifu within this review, but I want to take a second to let you guys know we have guides, tips and tricks, and some special videos about this game that you can check out in both our playthrough channel and this news channel. Sifu is a surprise that I love so much. I enjoyed this game and I'm excited for players to get into the experience. We'll start off by saying the game is very challenging as you progress, but it is also very rewarding. And there is a lot to get into when it comes to the reasons for that. And mainly it's because there's a lot of replayability for everyone to experience. Before we get into the game fully, I just would like to break a couple of things down. Why do I recommend this game? Well, if you're into beat 'em up style martial arts game, and this is the one for you. It's focused in Kung Fu, but you can see a whole lot of combat and different elements that are very special. From using environmental objects to using the environment to fight off enemies. There's tons of variety within the combat system. Before we talk about the combat system, this is a spoiler-free video, but I want to discuss a little bit of the story that we've seen from the official trailer and the introduction of the game and the reason why the protagonist is motivated. As we know, most games and movies tend to feature somebody out for revenge, and the protagonist has lost his family and he wants to find the 5 assassins. And that is all I will say about the story without spoiling anything. We'll say that there's a really great system in this game for you. As you play, you're not only fighting off these assassins, but you're discovering different things within the universe and what they've been up to in the bigger picture, and a storyline about yourself as well within the plot. So for that reason right there, I think it's pretty interesting, and it ties into the gameplay in many different fashions. And we'll get into deeper layers, but one good example is the detective board. This is where you find clues throughout the game. You also can unlock secret areas, finding keys and cards to get into certain places that are going to open up more details about the story and what is happening. One of the biggest mysteries, and what we can call, and we all usually have fell in love with, the Asian fables, the stories from mythical aspects that are super interesting. And this game does have one that is fairly intriguing. You have pendants, and these pendants allow you to revive. Every time you die, you can come back from the dead. And this is a very important part for the story, but also for the gameplay. And as for gameplay, we're going to talk about that. It's a very critical aspect. The pendant allows you to revive, but you start to age. So you begin the game at 20, and it's a super interesting mechanic for the game to be able to allow you to come back to life, but at the cost of aging. And the more you age, there are 2 elements that it affects. First of all, your health drops lower. Then your damage goes up higher. So you basically are becoming a master at combat. But of course, the older you get, the more fragile you will be. And I believe this is a great mechanic because the wiser you are, the more you're less likely to get hit and the more damage you can output, which is true in life. Specifically in combat, you can see some of the masters and senseis who really display that. Now, the death counter does keep track of your lives, but on an opposite aspect, you're losing age. There's also a counter right next to you aging, and that multiplies. Every single death will be added up. So if you have 4 deaths and you're 30 years old, you will end up turning 34 when you revive. This system is in place, making it intense. The older you get, the farther along in the game you get. And that is the type of experience that you want to have. Intense moments. And speaking of intense moments, now is a chance to dive into the core of this game and everything you're going to be doing. It's pulse pounding combat. And what I mean by that, the combat is great. It's a lot of options for you as a fighter trying to survive. And you have combinations, whether it's grappling, striking, and environmental aspects as well. Being able to throw enemies through walls and just brutally taking them down, using weapons to attack as well. This is such a critical aspect of the game. You can use furniture, bottles, brooms, bats, machetes, and so much more in the environment. On top of that, there's a system, a skill tree, where you can unlock new abilities. And the reason why this is important to note is because you will end up learning these as you go. And dying doesn't mean it's game over. You earn XP from every enemy you take down. And basically, with that XP, you're able to purchase new moves. The catch is, just like your life keeps on getting older, your moves are temporary unless you purchase them permanently. And the only way to do that is you have to get a lot of XP and purchase them the required amount of times. Each move has a different amount of requirements. The reason I love what this game does with that is because the replayability. I have already played the game 3 times, unlocking pretty much every move in the game and enjoying the new moves. There's things like a slide kick, which to me is one of the most fun. Then of course you have other moves like Environmental Master, where you can throw objects by kicking them up to enemies' faces. There's tons of combinations in this game, as well as small things like catching weapons. When an enemy throws it, you can catch it and throw it back at them. There's tons of variety here. 150 is what the developers said. For me, that is more than enough to truly enjoy this game and take it to the next level. Now, on top of this, we want to talk about the gameplay environment, enemy types, and things of that nature. Enemy types do vary. You have your standard enemies who you'll end up seeing throughout the game, and they are basic, but if you let them catch you off guard, especially when there's multiple versions of them in the area, sometimes they'll pick up weapons that they'll throw at you while you're fighting somebody else, and they'll pick up bats and different things as well, where you got to be very strategic on how you play. And what I love about the combat is that you can use the environment to your advantage, escaping, jumping over tables, or jumping through a bar so that you won't be surrounded anymore. are things that I personally love to do during my playthrough. Funneling enemies to fight them single-handed instead of grouping surrounding you. The enemies do surround you. With that in mind, the combat is very fluid. So you're going to be able to parry, dodge, and evade the enemies once you master that skill. And then of course, being able to hit multiple enemies to slow them down and not get hit is just as critical. There's some of the key components that I personally like in the game when it comes to enemies, but there's tons more. There's some bigger enemies who will grab you and slam you down, and these are very, very difficult and take some skill to master how to dodge their grapples. And of course, there's mini bosses throughout the game where they have a variety of combinations and different attacks and different ranges. Some use weapons. You have to be very careful when fighting them. Speaking of fighting, when you get to the bosses, this is where the fun stuff begins. These bosses do vary. You can find one that has great agility and is able to dodge and attack you from long ranges, jumping out of nowhere to get you. Then you have straightforward bosses where they're using a long staff and their combinations reach far, and you have to try to evade and block them while trying to put them to fight. The best part I love is that these enemies are responsive. So they will parry you when you try to parry them, and then dodge if you parry them. And that right there makes the gameplay a lot more exciting, feeling responsive. There's so many elements to this game to dive into, but this is just my general thoughts. I'm not trying to do a guide here, but the principle of what I'm talking about is the excitement of playing a kung fu movie style video game. Every moment has that feeling, and they capture martial arts at its finest. And I dare say there hasn't been many video games that have captured it this realistic. Kung Fu is a very difficult skill to master. Myself, who has practiced the Shaolin Arts, learned a little bit of Kung Fu and has not come close to mastering it. And that's what the name of this game is. Sifu stands for master. And I'm always impressed by what they've done and what they're doing. The developers, SloClap, have put together an amazing game here, and they continue to evolve. Starting off with Absorber, which I really love. It had a multiplayer aspect, and it was a lot different than what we see here in Sifu, but that game was the foundation of combat. And now we've got a greater game. And honestly, at this very moment, I believe it's going to be one of my Game of the Year candidates. Speaking of why I think it's Game of the Year, put it simple, the storyline is compelling. There's a lot of reasons for you to be motivated to continue and get to the very end and get the revenge you deserve. But also there's other revealing aspects to your life, like the mystery of the pendant that keeps bringing you back to life. How does that all work? And all of the other elements in the story, which I will not spoil anything. The replayability is very high. You can complete 2 or 3 missions, then die in the 4th chapter and get game over after reaching a certain age, because you can't go past a certain age. Then have a bunch of great moves unlocked and come back stronger than ever, destroying everybody in your way, make it to the end of the game on your 2nd run, and feel rewarded for all the hard work that you did to get there. So that replayability is very special and is very unique, and I love the fact that they put that into place. Now, if I was to try to give my complaints about the game, I think for many players who are casual and just jump on a video game once in a while, if they purchase Sifu, might be too challenging for them. And basically, these tougher games, Dark Souls. Last year we had an amazingly difficult game that was my game of the year, Returnal, actually come out and be extremely difficult, but so much fun. And I believe Sifu was in that same category with these games having a difficult time to be able to complete. And the point of the game is to die and to start over and continue to master all of these different moves. I do have guides and tips about how to master them easier and to not put the pressure on yourself to complete the game right away. Master a couple of great moves and then go ahead from there. And I do believe that those that play this and give it the time and energy will enjoy it. While I am saying that is a complaint, that for many casuals this game will be too difficult, they might get turned off by it. And a great example is Returnal of last year. All the people who purchased Returnal, only 10% of the people completed the game. And it wasn't because it wasn't fun. I promise you, anybody that played Returnal had a blast fighting through enemies. It just gets very difficult. Fighting off bosses and enemies throughout that game is very difficult. And I believe this game does something similar, but it's not drastic. Once you learn how to parry, learn how to dodge, and then put some combinations together. One thing that I'm doing and I've done is study each boss and all of their movesets, their combinations, when do they parry, and it's made my run through a lot easier once I figured out how they play. And that's what gaming is about for me. Getting good. Doesn't matter if you play a multiplayer game or a single player game like Sifu, getting good is key. And this game challenges you drastically in that remark. So these are the key elements and my thoughts on Sifu. I have so much more to discuss with this game, and I will do a lot more storytelling to help you guys see different sides of the game outside of a quick review to understand if this game is worth your time. Honestly, I do think it is when it comes to having fun being a badass Kung Fu master, or at least becoming a Kung Fu master, just like the game's storyline and the mechanics also present that. As you get older, you get stronger, unlocking more moves as you go. You continue to master the skill. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Feel free to like, subscribe. We will be back with tons of great stuff this year. And I do live stream frequently. You can check out my Twitch, Mad Gamer INC, and should have a good time with that. I hope you guys enjoy the game. Please tell me what you think and what you feel if you enjoyed it. What are the elements that you like? What area are you stuck in? Have you watched my farming methods and my tips and tricks videos to be able to learn more about the game? This is Mad Gamer signing out for madgamer.com.